Mhm.
So welcome everyone to the Association for Social Economics webinar podcast series. Throughout this series, we'll explore the profound and multifaceted impact of economics. This podcast series is sponsored by the ASE, whose mission is to foster research and publications centered on the reciprocal relationship between economics and the broader questions of human dignity, ethical values, and social philosophy. Each month, I get a chance to sit down and interview scholars in the field. I am your host, Iris Booter, and with me today, I have Dr. Pete Vechsuruck, Assistant Professor of Economics at the University of Rhode Island. Pete received his PhD in economics from the University of Utah. His research interests include applied macroeconomics, development economics, international economics, and history of economic thought. At URI, he has taught principles of micro and macroeconomics, competing traditions in economics, East Asian economic history and development, and China and the global economy. So thank you so much, Pete, for being here with us today. So we've gotten a very brief glimpse into your background with that biography, but could you talk more about what motivated you to get into the field of economics?
All right. Thanks for having me today. Okay, so I was born and raised in Bangkok, Thailand, and I grew up in the late 1980s and early 1990s in Thailand, and that is what economic historian call today is the golden age of Thai capitalism. And at that time, like economic growth was around 9% per year for a decade, and everyone talks about Thailand like we are the fastest growing economy in the world at that time. So my life during childhood was very happy. And then there were two key moments that make me decide that I'm interested to go into the field in economics. Okay, the first moment is, of course, the Asian financial crisis in 1997. So at that time, I was in the middle school. I did not understand anything around me much. What I understand is that like people were very sad, like sad people are around me. That time, I love reading newspaper. Even today, I love reading newspaper. So I read newspaper every day, and I can remember that like every day I need to read out like a lot of things that make me feel bad, like people lost their jobs and so on and so forth. I don't want to go into detail what I read. So that is the first moment that made me interested in economics. The second one is that um, when I need to apply for college, um, I realized that I was not good enough to become engineers. So in my country, if you are a male and you are like quote unquote smart, you must go to either medical school or engineering school. But I realized that I was not good in biology. I was not good in physics. I was not good enough in chemistry. So I need to look at something else. So that's how I think about it. So I know that I was okay in mathematics and I was interested in society. So I decided, okay, economics should be the one. So by these two reasons, that's how I got into economics.
Wow, fascinating. I did not know that about the Thai culture. Wow. Um, so like myself, you attended the University of Utah for your PhD program. So what in particular interests you to applying and attending the University of Utah, known for the heterodox economics program?
Yeah, I want to say that heterodox economics or heterodox community in Thailand is very small. Even today is very small. And like 10, 20 years ago, like it was smaller than today. I never heard about heterodox economics before when I was entered the college. But
Mhm.
until I was at like junior or senior year that I happened to read a book by a guy. He went to UMass Amherst and he wrote a book about like what is heterodox economics.
Mhm.
So I read his book and I start to learn about that there are many ways to do economics. There's not only one way like mathematics, models, so on and so forth. So I learned that. I was fascinated by that. And then I also start to hear about programs at Utah, about people there. I heard about some people that graduated from Utah. So that's how that I end up applied to Utah
Mhm.
and went to PhD in Utah.
Okay. Yeah, good stuff. I didn't really know much for my undergrad and my master's program about heterodox econ too until I really just explored PhD programs, and I was just gravitated personally about the social component more so, right? About bringing in the cultural norms or the social aspects of in heterodox economics rather than just the mainstream econ. So you currently serve as the Eastern Regional Director on the Executive Council for the ASE. So can you describe how you got involved with the ASE and what your duties are in your current role?
Okay, so first, I need to give the credit to our colleague, Jackie Strenio, that she recommended this job to me. That when it's open, at first I did not hear about that, but she recommended that I live around the area in the
Mhm.
eastern region, and so it's open. And she told me, and I'm interested, so I apply. At the end, I got it, and my jobs are quite simple. There are two main jobs that I'm in charge right now. The first one is that I'm the voting members. So I need to attend the meetings, and if there is anything important comes up, I need to cast my vote. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I am in charge in organizing sessions at Eastern Economic Conference, that they rotate the locations between the Eastern states. Like next year, like this upcoming conference gonna be in Boston, and I'm gonna be the one that in charge organizing a couple sessions that we're gonna have in a couple months from today.
Mhm. That's fascinating. That's great stuff. And so, speaking of like conferences and research, so what areas of economics does your research concentrate on, and really what motivates you to be involved in those particular areas of research?
Yeah, the main thing is that I half of my life I spend time in Thailand, and then another half of my life I spend time in the US. And the more that I spend time here in the US, the more I can see the difference between like uh uh to be born and raised in uh middle income countries and rich countries, and that make me more and more interested and think about the topic that stick with me for too long, is that like what make a country become poor or rich countries, right? So that is development economics. And like I said, the background of Thailand is that we were not bad. Like we quite successful that we climbed up the ladder from the poor country in the 1960s to become middle income countries in the 1990s. But today, Thailand is not at the same level as country like South Korea. Let's say like everyone talk about South Korea, we are not at that level, right? Um, so first I try to find that like what kind of policies or international factors that prevent some countries to become rich countries, right? So once I interested about Thailand, Southeast Asia, then my interest also expand to the rest of the world, other developing countries as well, like in Africa, in Latin America. So everything boiled down together, and my interest today is still all about economic development,
Mhm.
macroeconomics, and international economics.
Wow, that's good stuff. Very, very interesting work, very important work that you do. So speaking of, you have a new article coming up in the journal of called Asian Development Review. The article is called Double Dualism, Economic Growth Slowdown, and Falling Income Inequality in Thailand. And for our viewers, we will link that article once it's available in our show notes. So I have a three-part question or a threefold question, right? So can you explain your motivation for this paper, the main findings, and what you mean by when you say double dualism, which is a term because I'm a microeconomist, I actually don't know personally, and any future research about Thailand and development.
All right. So first, about my motivation. Okay, so this paper I co-author with my colleague Praupan. She's from Thailand as well, and we try to look at anything that unique in the Thai economy in the past 20 years. And one thing that quite unique in the Thai economy is that we have first, we have falling income inequality. This is very unique that uh, if anyone that look at Thai economy and they see that, okay, income inequality declined, that's a good thing, right? Because most country in the world today, you talk about the US, you talk about China, you talk about Japan, any country, inequality goes up. But for us, it's going down. So most of literature so far try to explain this one from the political point of view that there has been like a political movement in the past 20 years that bargained asking for like the expansion of social welfare. So that is on political reasons. In this paper, we try to find alternative ways to look at why declining inequality happens, right? So we look at the structural transformation in the labor market in Thailand. That is there anything changed in the past 20 years that can explain why inequality has been going down? Okay, so this is our motivation of our paper. Okay, the main findings is that when we look at the Thai labor market, there is a unique structural transformation, and in this transformation, there are two kinds of dualisms that happen at the same time. Okay, there are two dualisms. The first one is dualism between formal and informal workers. Okay, so in development study, we call informal workers are workers who work in the business or entities that not legal, not recognized by the government, by the state. Some of them might not pay direct taxes. Example that you can think about is that when you travel in developing countries, you can see a lot of street vendors that try to sell you some food, try to sell you some drinks. So those, you can think that those are informal activities, informal workers. Most of them, they don't pay direct tax because there's no like formal receipt when you buy anything from them. And this kind of activities are quite rampant, quite prevail in developing countries. Okay, so in Thailand, what we have observed in the past 20 years is that this kind of informal workers, informal jobs has been going down, and many of them move from informal work to formal work. So we can sense that that's the good thing, because most of informal workers, most of them receive less wages than formal workers. Most of them receive less wages than formal workers. So when they change the job, when they can move the jobs from informal to formal, their wages goes up, and this close the gap between formal and informal employment. So this one is the first dualism is that the size of informal employment in Thailand has been going down, and that led to the decline in income inequality. So that is a good thing. But another dualism that happened in the Thai economy, and we consider this one is not quite a good thing, and this led to what we put in our title, the economic growth slowdown, is that when you look at the Thai labor market in the past 20 years, we can separate them into the dynamic sector and the stagnant sector. The dynamic sector are the economic sectors that have higher than average labor productivity. So you can think like manufacturing, like producing cars, producing iPhones, producing like hard disk computers. So these kind of economic sectors, productivity is very high. At the same time, we have stagnant sectors that have lower than average productivity. So you can think about like transportation services. You can think about like um, services, like even like education.
Mm-hmm.
We categorize that in stagnant sector because the labor productivity is lower than average. So we distinguish into the dynamic and stagnant sectors, and what we found is that more and more workers, when they move out from informal employment, they don't move to the dynamic sector, they move to the stagnant sectors. So rather than going to work in like IT, like producing cars, they move to work in transportation and some services that productivity is low.
Mm-hmm.
So this second kind of dualism is not that great to the economic growth, and that led to economic growth slowdown. So in conclusion, these are two dualism that we talk about: dualism of formal, informal, and dualism about dynamic and stagnant sector that unique to the Thai labor market and cause declining income inequality and economic growth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so the last question is on the future research. So right now, my current research on Thailand is I uh, I have another paper that co-author with another scholar that we try to look at international trade, export of Thailand since 2000. Okay, so basically we try to look at that since 2001 is the year that China entered the World Trade Organization, or WTO.
Mm-hmm.
So since 2001 until today, China start to gain more and more market shares in the global market, in the international market. They produce a lot. Their manufacturing is super strong, and that happened since 2001. So in this research that we try to look at, we try to look uh, is there any positive or negative impact when China entered WTO on the Thai export? The reason is that Thailand has been very strong on the export market before China, but since China entered the global trade, the WTO, I think it's quite clear that the global market is a lot more competitive, and to medium-sized or small-sized country like Thailand and others, it's not quite a good time to do international trade so far in the past 20
Mm-hmm.
years. So the new research that we try to look at is to look at competitiveness in the export market in Thailand after 2001. So that is our current research right now.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, in your view, how do you think economic theories and models that we often, talk about in our classes and, read about, either, account or fail to account for the social dimensions of economic behavior?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I can remember that when I was in the classroom, that was in Thailand. When we talk about like macroeconomics, like when I was in macro or microeconomics, it's all about model. Like we do this kind of linear function. We need to know how to ship this, ship that. Uh, I am quite okay with that, and I still like models. I love economic models. The good thing about models or theories is that is there rigor, is there precisions that when demand goes up by this percent or that percent, you can tell that how much quantity gonna goes up by this percent or that percent, or price that's gonna change. So model is good, but at the same time, it has a lot of limitations, and I think that those kind of limitations are something that we should more and more focus on, like dimension about history, for example, like I have taught principle of macroeconomics for many semester, and when I taught like Keynesian macroeconomics about the 45-degree line, that like everyone learns about the 45-degree line, that the curve need to shift up, shift down. I think that, okay, we do the math, we do the graph, but what's more important is to understand that the reason that that model came into that way, the reason that that model ignore about like price or inflation, there is a historical reason on that. And that is because during 1930s, 40s, 50s in the US, we have like the price control. So price was not the concern for economists during that time. The concern is about why fiscal policy matters. So that's why that model focus more on the multiplier. So the core of that, the gist of that model is about the multiplier. And because of historical reason, that price was not the main concern. And that's why that model ignore about price. So when we taught that model, and if people want to learn more about price, undergrad students cannot use that model. They need to go look at other models. So I think that overall, economic theories, models is good, but there are many limitations that we need to address to talk about, especially when we teach our undergrad students.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question I have is, how do you think, in your opinion, does an understanding of social economics contribute to a more inclusive and equitable understanding of economic behavior? And how do you bring this into your classroom?
Yeah, I think that today, especially that when I teach that in my class, that my students have like diverse backgrounds, their discipline, their major also very different, and we cannot just talk about like just economics, like, or like everything about models or theories. I need to bring in many dimensions on societies, on psychology, on like any other stuff. Like let me give you one example. Like one of my classes last week, I taught about Chinese youth unemployment. So this is on the class on China and the global economy. And we talk about like macroeconomy in China, right? So that's about economics. But one phenomenon that quite distinct in the Chinese economy in the past couple months is that youth unemployment, young people unemployment goes up like very high today. Around 20% of young people today in China has no jobs. And the impact of that is huge. The impact of that is huge. And it has like socio economical impact. It has like psychological impact. It has also some cultural impact. Okay, one example is that in the past year, China has a culture that they call the lying flat culture. Lying flat means that you lying flat, you sleep, you don't do anything, you give up on everything because that the world is unfair, you cannot do anything, so you give up, you don't work anymore. And this is the culture that are popular, and is what young Chinese people talk about that today. And that this is how like unemployment um slow down economic growth, and rising inequality in China has impact on young people today. So right now it's very bad. Right now that like young people don't have confidence in their economy, in their job market. So the next step, or right now what we see is that like young people in China try to move out of their countries. And this kind of same situation in Thailand, my country, is quite the same, that a lot of young people today, because of inequality, because of jobs that they cannot find jobs that fit to their needs, they try to find elsewhere. So we see a lot of brain drain from China, from Thailand, moving out of the country.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And similar to this, or I guess adding on to this discussion, so how do you think social factors such as what you already mentioned, income inequality and poverty, affect economic outcomes for individuals and communities? Can you expand on that a bit more?
Yeah, so we know that social factors, we know that poverties, we know that inequality can have an impact on uh, societies in many ways. So this brings to the example that I just mentioned about what happened in China, what happened in Thailand, that the big topic. The big topic that we know today is that in many countries across the world that inequality is very high. We live in the world of, like, we call that the Gilded Age, that same way that the US experienced in the late 19th century, early 20th century, that when these kind of things happen, you can see that the way that people respond to that is quite different, right? Quite different across country based on their culture, based on their social setting, based on their like many different characteristics of their society. So I think that it's very interesting today that the topic is like inequality. How can that impact on other dimension of the society, right? So right now we can look at like how the youth, young people respond to this kind of bad inequality, bad economy. We see that in China, they have lying flat culture. In Thailand, young people, they start to protest. They
Mm-hmm.
start to push back on business or like government that try to ask them, that try to force them to work harder or things like that. So I think that you're gonna see these kind of things across the world in most countries, that inequality rising, poverty rising, and that have different kinds of consequences on different societies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So before we end our discussion today, which has been fascinating, can you let our listeners know where to find you, to follow your research, and just read more about you?
Okay, so I'm gonna leave my personal website. My website is just vechsuruck.com. I'm gonna leave my Twitter, and I'm gonna leave the link of my LinkedIn right there too, so you
Yeah,
can
well,
put that in the link. Yeah.
yes, we'll add it to the show notes for sure. And so, lastly, I want to end our discussion with looking forward. So, what do you envision the future of social economics looks like?
Yeah, so since I consider myself as the international scholar, so I wish that in the future we can incorporate more scholars from international communities. Okay, let me talk about like in Southeast Asia, that I think that there are many topics that related to social economics that still under research in Southeast Asia, because that when I look at many great fascinating topic in the West that people study about, like how health can impact on economy, inequality, or like other topics about social economics, I think that those kind of topics are related to Southeast Asia, and we still quite under research on that. So I hope that in the future we can incorporate more people from Southeast Asia that study about this kind of social economics. I know that right now there are some people that start to do that. Many of them are not in economics department. Some of them are from political science. Some of them might be from sociologies. I hope that in the future we can gather those scholars, that we can bring in topics that interesting from the regions, from the part of the world that these kind of things are still under research.
Mhm.
I think that these kind of interdisciplinary, like in economics, that try to blend in new lens, new dimensions from other disciplines. This kind of thing will just move forward. This kind of thing will gain more and more popularity because the more I try to study about economics, the more I know that we cannot use only one lens to look at the economy anymore. So I think that I hope in the future, it's gonna our community will gain more importance and will bring in more people from different parts of the world.
Yeah, very interesting, and I couldn't agree more. And I believe also in a very interdisciplinary approach. So, thank you so much for your time. It's been fascinating to get to know you more, and look forward to connecting at the Eastern Economic Association conference.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me today. It's quite a great, fantastic, and very fun talk today.
Yes, thank you.